The sky over Velra Prime burned with colors that should not exist. Green fire fell from the heavens as orbital bombardment cannons tore through the atmosphere. High Prelate Ixan stood at the window of what remained of the planetary council chamber, watching his world die. The Kragath Empire had come without warning, without demands, without mercy. They came only to conquer and enslave. 3 billion Velrans lived on this world yesterday. Today, Ixan could not count how many remained. The communication networks were destroyed. The evacuation centers were rubble. The defense satellites that his people built for monitoring asteroids had been swept away like dust in the first hour of the attack. Velrans were a peaceful species. They had never known war. They did not understand it even as it consumed them. High Prelate, we have one chance, his aide whispered, bleeding from a wound across her face. The emergency broadcast array. It still has power. We can send a message to the Galactic Council. Ixan nodded slowly. His people were dying while he stood here. Every second mattered. They moved through the crumbling building, stepping over debris and bodies. The broadcast chamber was deep underground, built centuries ago when Velrans first achieved faster-than-light communication. It was meant to announce their presence to the stars with joy. Now it would scream their extinction. He sat at the ancient console and activated every channel, every frequency the Galactic Council monitored. His hand shook as he began to speak. This is High Prelate Ixan of Velra Prime. We are under attack by the Kragath Empire. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We have no weapons, no armies, no way to defend ourselves. We beg the Galactic Council for help. We beg any species listening to help us. Please, we are a peaceful people. We have harmed no one. Please help us. He sent the message on repeat and collapsed against the console. There was nothing else to do now but wait and hope. Far across the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the great chamber that floated in neutral space. They listened to Ixan's message in silence. When it finished, the silence continued. The council speaker, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, finally spoke. The situation on Velra Prime is tragic. We extend our deepest sympathies to the Velran people. Sympathies? The Moran ambassador rose from her seat. They need ships, weapons, soldiers. They need intervention. The Kragath Empire is a recognized sovereign power, another voice countered. What they do within their sphere of influence is their concern. Since when is genocide an internal matter? The arguments began, but everyone in the chamber knew the truth. The Kragath were too strong, too aggressive, too willing to fight. No species wanted to face them in battle. It was easier to express sympathy, to condemn the violence, to do nothing of substance. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong did as they pleased. The weak suffered. And the civilized species watched and called themselves moral for feeling bad about it. One representative sat in silence throughout the debate. Ambassador Borum Shin of Earth listened and calculated. Her species had joined the Galactic Council only 30 years ago, barely a moment in cosmic time. Humans were the newcomers, the children, the ones whispered about when they were not present. Deathworlders, born on a planet that should not produce sapient life. Too aggressive, too emotional, too dangerous. Let them whisper, Borum thought. She activated her quantum communication link to Earth. The message reached Earth's unified government headquarters in Geneva within seconds. Admiral Tai-Ho Kim was pulled from a strategic planning meeting to receive it. He read the Velran distress call once, then read it again. He looked at the attached files showing Kragath fleet positions, casualty estimates, tactical assessments. Then he walked directly to the emergency council chamber. We're mobilizing the fleet, he announced without preamble. The Secretary General looked up from her desk. For what purpose? The Velrans need help. We're going. Admiral, Velra Prime is 52 systems away. The Galactic Council has jurisdiction over. The Galactic Council is doing nothing. Tai-Ho interrupted. I've already read Ambassador Shin's report. They're debating while people die. Earth doesn't debate about helping people who call for help. The Secretary General studied him for a long moment. Tai-Ho was 52 years old, a veteran of Earth's unification wars when humanity nearly destroyed itself before learning to work together. He had seen the worst of what humans could do to each other. He had also seen the best, when former enemies became brothers to survive. He knew the cost of violence and the greater cost of standing aside while evil happened. How fast can we deploy? She asked. 72 hours for full mobilization. 48 if we push it. Push it. I'll call the emergency session of the Unified Parliament. But Tejo, they'll ask questions. We have no treaty with the Velrans, no trade agreements, no strategic interest in their system. Why are we doing this? Tejo's expression did not change. Because they asked for help. That's reason enough. The Secretary General smiled slightly. That's what I thought you'd say. Go save them, Admiral. Tejo left immediately and began making calls. Within an hour, every major military installation on Earth was activated. Shipyards that built vessels for exploration and defense suddenly retooled for war production. Crews on leave were recalled. Reserves were activated. Supply chains that could feed a planet were redirected to feed a fleet. Captain Myung Park received her orders while commanding routine patrols near Mars. Her dreadnought, the Indomitable, was to return to Earth orbit immediately and prepare for extended deployment. She did not ask questions. She simply acknowledged and turned her ship around. Commander Jinho Choi was training special operations teams in the asteroid belt when his orders came through. Prepare for boarding actions against hostile vessels. Enemy force composition, Kragath Empire. Rules of engagement, total war. He gathered his teams and began running combat scenarios. His soldiers did not complain about the sudden change. They had trained for situations like this. Dr. Hirin Song was at the Xenobiology Research Center in Seoul when she was summoned to fleet headquarters. They needed someone who understood alien psychology, alien culture, who could communicate with the Velrans and make them understand what was about to happen. She packed her equipment and was on a shuttle within the hour. Lieutenant Daeun Kwan was the youngest person in the briefing room when they told her Ghost Squadron would lead the fighter screens for the fleet. She was 26 years old and had more confirmed kills than any other pilot in the service. She listened to the mission parameters and felt her blood run cold. The Kragath had numerical superiority, better positions, and entrenched defenses. Her squadron would face impossible odds. She smiled. Impossible odds meant no one expected you to win. That made winning so much better. Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Millions of humans received orders, packed their gear, said goodbye to families, and reported for duty. Some would not return. Everyone knew this. No one hesitated. The Galactic Council was still debating when the first reports reached them. Human ships were launching from Earth orbit. Hundreds of them, then thousands. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, frigates, support vessels, medical ships, supply craft. The humans were mobilizing their entire military force. This is unprecedented, the council speaker declared. The humans cannot interfere in Kragath sovereign territory. Ambassador Boram Shin stood. We are not asking permission. We are informing you. Earth is responding to the Velran distress call. We will arrive in Velran space in 3 weeks. Any species that wishes to assist is welcome. Any species that wishes to interfere will be treated as hostile. The chamber erupted in protests and arguments. Boram sat down and closed her communication link. Let them talk. Earth was already moving. High Prelate Ixan received the message 2 days after his broadcast. It was not from the Galactic Council. It was from Earth. This is Admiral Tejo Kim of the Unified Earth Fleet. We received your distress call. We are coming. Hold on. Help is on the way. Ixan wept. He did not know who these humans were or why they would cross the galaxy for strangers. He only knew that someone had answered when everyone else looked away. Above Velra Prime, the Kragath continued their bombardment. They had no idea what was coming for them. The human fleet moved through space like a steel river. 847 warships traveling in formation, their engines burning bright enough to be seen from planets they passed. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Myung Park watched the tactical display and thought about the mission ahead. 3 weeks to reach Velran space. 3 weeks to prepare for a battle against an enemy that had never lost a war. She turned to her crew. They were young, most of them. Earth's fleet had expanded rapidly after joining the galactic community, but experience took time to build. These men and women had trained for combat but never faced it. Soon they would. Soon they would understand what their instructors meant when they said war was nothing like the simulations. Listen up, Myung said quietly. Her crew stopped what they were doing and faced her. We're going into battle for people we've never met. People who can't fight back. People who are dying while we travel toward them. I want you to remember that when things get hard, we're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting because someone asked for help and everyone else said no. A young ensign raised her hand. Captain, why do we do this? Why does Earth risk so much for strangers? Myung smiled, but there was sadness in it. Because we know what it's like when no one comes. Earth almost died a dozen times before we reached the stars. Asteroid impacts, ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, and then we nearly destroyed ourselves with war. We learned something from all that suffering. We learned that the worst thing in the universe is not death. It's dying alone while others who could help choose not to. The ensign nodded slowly, and Myung saw understanding in her eyes. This was why humans fought. Not from anger or aggression, but from memory. Memory of being helpless. Memory of needing help. Memory of the few times someone had helped and how much that had mattered. In the medical bay, Dr. Hyeron Song was establishing communication with the Velrun survivors. The connection was bad, interrupted by Kragath jamming and the destruction of relay stations, but she could hear High Prelate Ixan's voice. "How many ships are you sending?" he asked. 847 warships, Hyeron replied. 12 dreadnoughts, 72 carriers, and supporting vessels. We also have medical ships and supply craft to help with refugee evacuation. There was a long silence. Then Ixan spoke again, his voice confused. "That is your entire military fleet. You are sending everything for us?" "Yes, but why? We have no alliance with Earth. We have never even spoken before today. Why would you risk so much?" Hyeron paused, thinking about how to explain. "On Earth, we have an old saying. When someone is drowning, you don't ask if they're a friend before you jump in the water. You just jump. That's what humans do." She could hear Ixan crying through the transmission. She let him cry. Sometimes there were no words that helped, only the knowledge that someone cared enough to try. Commander Jin Ho Choi was running his special operations teams through combat drills in the training bay. They practiced boarding actions, close quarters combat, fighting in zero gravity and toxic atmospheres. His soldiers moved with brutal efficiency. They had to. Boarding enemy vessels was the most dangerous job in the fleet. "Again," Jinho ordered as the simulation ended. "Faster this time. When we breach a Kragath ship, they'll be waiting. No hesitation, no mercy, no stopping until the ship is secure." A young soldier raised his hand. "Sir, we've read the files on the Kragath. They're bigger than us, stronger than us, and they've been fighting wars for thousands of years. How do we beat them?" Jinho looked at the soldier, and his expression was cold. "We beat them by being what they think we are. Deathworlders. Earth tried to kill humans every single day for millions of years. Predators hunted us. Diseases tried to destroy us. The weather tried to freeze us or burn us or drown us. And we're still here. We learned to be tougher than anything trying to kill us. The Kragath are just another thing trying to kill us. We know how to handle that." The soldiers nodded. They understood. Human biology was shaped by surviving impossible odds. They could function with injuries that would kill most species. They could keep fighting when they should be dead. They healed from wounds that would cripple others permanently. This was the Deathworld advantage, and they would use every bit of it. Far behind the fleet on Earth, Ambassador Borum Shin was facing the Galactic Council again. They had called an emergency session to condemn human actions. She listened to the speeches about human aggression, about respecting sovereign boundaries, about the dangers of military intervention. She waited until they finished. "Are you done?" she asked calmly. The council speaker made a sound that might have been offense. "Ambassador, the council has serious concerns about Earth's actions. You are escalating a regional conflict into a potential galactic war." "We're responding to a distress call that everyone else ignored," Borum replied. "The Velruns are being slaughtered. Their crime was being weak and peaceful. Their punishment is extinction. And the Galactic Council does nothing except talk. We have procedures, Ambassador. Diplomatic channels, negotiation protocols, sanctions, and— How many Velruns will die while you're following procedures?" Borum interrupted. "How many are dying right now while we have this conversation? The Kragath aren't negotiating. They're killing, and you're letting them because you're afraid." The chamber erupted in protests. Ambassador after ambassador stood to defend their positions, to explain why intervention was complicated, why Earth's actions were dangerous. Borum let them talk. She had seen this before. Fear dressed up as wisdom, cowardice disguised as restraint. When they finally quieted, she spoke again. "I've read the files on Earth's admission to the Galactic Council. I know what you wrote about us, that humans are too aggressive, too emotional, too willing to fight. You called us Deathworlders like it was an insult. You debated for 3 years whether to let us join because you were afraid of what we might do." She paused and looked around the chamber. You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you think. Yes, Earth is a death world. Yes, it shaped us into something different from you. We're harder than you, tougher than you, more willing to sacrifice than you. But that's not what should scare you. What should scare you is that we're willing to do what's right even when it costs us, even when it's dangerous, even when everyone else says no. That's what makes us different. And that's why we're going to save the Velrans while you sit here and debate. She closed the communication link before anyone could respond. The Council could condemn Earth's actions all they wanted. The fleet was already 3 days into its journey. Nothing would stop it now. On the fleet's flagship, Admiral Tejo stood in the command center reviewing intelligence reports. The Kragath had 2,400 ships in Velran space. They controlled the orbital zones, the jump points, everything. By any standard military assessment, the human fleet was outmatched and would be slaughtered. Tejo had spent his entire career making impossible situations possible. The Unification Wars had taught him that victory did not come from having superior numbers. It came from being willing to do what the enemy would not, from sacrificing what the enemy would not sacrifice, from fighting when the enemy expected you to surrender. Lieutenant Diane Kwan entered the command center and saluted. Admiral, Ghost Squadron is ready for briefing. Good. Tejo brought up the tactical display. The Kragath have fighter screens around every major orbital position. They outnumber our fighters 5-1. Your squadron will be the tip of the spear. You'll punch through their lines so our capital ships can engage. Dayon studied the display without expression. Sir, those odds mean we'll take massive casualties. Maybe complete losses? I know, Tejo said quietly. I'm not going to lie to you, Lieutenant. This mission will cost lives. A lot of lives. If you have anyone in Ghost Squadron who isn't ready for that, reassign them now. I need people who understand what we're doing and why it matters. Dayon was silent for a moment. She thought about the Velrans dying while the galaxy watched. She thought about Earth's history. All the times humans had faced extinction and survived by refusing to give up. She thought about why she had joined the military in the first place. To protect people who could not protect themselves. Ghost Squadron is ready, sir. All of us, we understand, Tejo nodded. He had expected nothing less. This was why humanity could do what other species could not because they were braver or stronger, but because they understood that some things were worth dying for. Protecting the innocent was one of those things. The fleet continued through space. Every day brought them closer to Velran space. Every day the crew prepared for the coming battle. They checked weapons, ran drills, wrote letters to families back home. Some would never send those letters. Everyone knew this. No one complained. Dr. Hieran sent daily updates to High Prelate Ixan. The messages were simple. We're coming, hold on. Help is on the way. She could not give him tactical details or precise arrival times, but she could give him hope. Sometimes hope was the most powerful weapon. On the 19th day of the journey, the fleet detected Kragath scouts at the edge of Velran space. The scouts saw the human fleet and immediately fled to report. War Master Thurak. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Velran space. For a moment, there was perfect silence as sensors came online and tactical displays updated. Then everyone saw what they were facing. 2,400 Kragath warships in defensive formation around Velra Prime. The enemy outnumbered them nearly 3-1. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Myung Park felt her crew tense as the numbers appeared on their screens. 3-1 odds. Any sane commander would retreat, request reinforcements, wait for better opportunities. But Admiral Tejo had not come here to be sane. He had come here to win. All ships battle formation Delta 7, Tejo's voice came across the fleet channel. Maintain speed. Do not slow down. Myung smiled grimly. Formation Delta 7 was an aggressive wedge, designed to punch through enemy lines at close range. It was also called the Spear Formation, because that was what it looked like and what it did. They were not going to maneuver or fight at range. They were going straight at the Kragath fleet at maximum speed. The Kragath detected the human formation and responded exactly as expected. They began moving ships to intercept, creating overlapping fields of fire that would shred anything that came through. It was good tactics. Against any other species, it would have worked perfectly. A communication request came from the Kragath flagship. Admiral Tejo accepted it, and War Master Thurak's face appeared on every human ship's display. He was massive, covered in armored scales with eyes that burned with confidence. He had conquered worlds. He had destroyed fleets. He had never known defeat. Human commander. Thurok rumbled, his translator making his voice sound like grinding rocks. You are outnumbered and outpositioned. Surrender now and I will allow your species to survive. Continue this foolishness and I will exterminate every human in this fleet. Teho's expression did not change. War Master Thurok, you have one chance to withdraw from Velran space. Leave now. That is your only warning. Thurok laughed, a sound like an avalanche. You dare threaten me, me? I have crushed empires that existed before your species discovered fire. What makes you think you can? Teho closed the communication link. He had given the warning as required by Earth's rules of engagement. The Kregath had refused. What happened next was on them. All ships, Teho transmitted. Fire at will, no mercy. No prisoners. They came here to commit genocide. We're going to teach them why that was a mistake. The human fleet opened fire. The first wave of missiles crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. Kregath point defense systems activated, shooting down most of them. Most, but not all. 17 Kregath ships died in the first 5 seconds of battle, their shields overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire. The Kregath return fire came immediately after, and space filled with energy weapons and kinetic rounds. 3 human destroyers died in the first exchange, then 5 more. The fleet did not slow down. Ghost Squadron, you're clear to launch, Myung transmitted to Lieutenant Deun Quan. Copy that, Captain. Ghost Squadron away. Dione led her fighters out of the carrier bay at maximum acceleration. 48 fighters against 240 Kregath interceptors. Impossible odds. She had faced worse in simulations. She hoped that counted for something. The Kregath fighters came at them in tight formations, disciplined and precise. They had been flying together for years, fighting together, killing together. Ghost Squadron had been together for 6 months. But Ghost Squadron had something the Kregath did not. They had grown up on a planet where the atmosphere tried to kill them, where weather patterns could destroy cities, where simply being alive meant fighting every day. Fear was not new to them. It was just another thing to push through. Break by pairs, Deun ordered. Use delta pattern, close range only. Make them regret chasing us. The squadron split apart, each pair of fighters moving in coordinated patterns that made them nearly impossible to target. The Kregath tried to follow, but their tight formations became a weakness. They got in each other's way, blocked each other's shots, collided when trying to track human fighters that moved like they were insane. Because by Kregath standards, they were insane. No sane pilot flew that close to enemy ships. No sane pilot made maneuvers that created forces that should knock them unconscious. No sane pilot kept fighting after taking damage that should destroy their craft. Daeun's fighter took a direct hit that sheared off half her port wing. Alarm screamed in her cockpit. Her co-pilot was dead, killed by shrapnel that had also torn through Daeun's side. She could feel blood filling her flight suit. She could feel her consciousness fading. She aimed her crippled fighter at a Kregath interceptor and fired her remaining missiles at point-blank range. Both ships exploded. Daeun ejected half a second before the explosion, her escape pod tumbling through the debris field. She watched through fading vision as her squadron continued fighting. 3 more of her pilots were gone. The rest were damaged, but they had killed 47 enemy fighters. 47 against 24. The math would make no sense to anyone else. To Ghost Squadron, it was just Tuesday. The capital ships crashed together like mountains colliding. Captain Myung's Indomitable led the human charge, her dreadnought's guns firing continuously. Kregath return fire hammered her shields, draining them in seconds. Then the hull armor began to fail. Warning lights filled the bridge. Shield generators are gone, her tactical officer reported. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Casualty reports coming in. Keep firing, Myung ordered. All weapons, all targets. Don't stop. A Kregath battleship tried to ram the Indomitable. Myung saw it coming and did something no sane captain would do. She rammed back. The 2 ships hit at combined speeds that should have destroyed both. The Kregath ship's hull crumpled like paper. The Indomitable's forward section was obliterated, killing everyone in the front third of the ship. But the engines still worked, the guns still fired, and Myung was still alive. Damage report, she called out. We've lost forward sections entirely, Captain. 317 crew dead. Main guns are offline, but secondary batteries still functional. We're still in the fight. Myung wiped blood from her forehead where something had hit her. Then we keep fighting. Commander Jin Ho Choi led the first boarding action against a Kregath cruiser. His team breached the hull using shaped charges that tore through armor like tissue paper. They entered through the hole in full combat armor, weapons ready. The Kragath were waiting for them. The first Kragath warrior that Jinho faced was twice his size and covered in natural armor that could stop most small arms fire. It charged at him, confident in its superior strength and mass. Jinho shot it in the eyes, then the throat, then kept shooting as he moved past its falling body. Behind him, his team did the same. They moved through the ship like a plague, killing anything that opposed them. The Kragath had never faced boarding actions like this. Most species tried to capture ships intact, to minimize casualties, to follow rules of warfare that made sense for civilized beings. Humans had no interest in capturing ships intact. They came to kill the crew and take the vessel out of the fight. When the Kragath gathered in strong points to defend, Jinho's team simply sealed the doors and vented the atmosphere. When the Kragath tried to counterattack, humans fought in conditions that should be impossible, in vacuum, in fire, in complete darkness. Jinho took a plasma round to the chest that melted through his armor and burned into his ribs. He stumbled, gasped, felt his body trying to shut down. He forced himself to keep moving. Pain was information. He acknowledged it and pushed it aside. His team needed him. The mission needed him. He could die after the battle was over. The cruiser's bridge was sealed behind blast doors. Jinho placed his last shaped charge and detonated it. The door became shrapnel. His team entered through the smoke and fire. The Kragath captain tried to surrender. Jinho shot him in the head. This was not a time for prisoners. The cruiser went dead in space, all systems destroyed, all crew killed. Jinho's team moved to the next target. Admiral Taiho watched the battle unfold from his command center. The tactical display showed losses mounting on both sides. 63 human ships destroyed. 140 Kragath ships destroyed. The numbers would look bad in any after-action report, but Taiho was not thinking about reports. He was thinking about the Velrans dying on the planet below while the galaxy watched. All ships push forward, he ordered. Concentrate fire on their command ships. Kill their leadership, the human fleet responded. Damaged ships that should have retreated kept fighting. Ships that had lost weapons used themselves as battering rams. Crews that had taken casualties kept their posts and continued working. This was the Deathworld advantage. Not that humans were stronger or faster or smarter. They were just more willing to die. For what they believed in, War Master Thurok watched, his fleet being torn apart, and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The humans were not fighting like a normal fleet. They were fighting like every ship was the last ship, like every soldier was the last soldier, like losing was not an option they would accept. He had killed more of them than they had killed of him, but his fleet was breaking while theirs kept coming. The silence after battle was always worse than the noise during it. Admiral Taiho stood in what remained of his command center, looking at damage reports and casualty lists that seemed to go on forever. 89 human ships destroyed, 12,317 crew dead, another 8,000 wounded badly enough to need major medical treatment. And those were just the numbers he had confirmed so far. More reports kept coming in. The Kragath had lost worse. Of their 2,400 ships, fewer than 200 had escaped. The rest were debris fields floating in space around Velra Prime. War Master Thurok was dead, his flagship destroyed by Captain Myung Park in her final act. Myung was dead too, along with most of her crew. Taiho felt the weight of every death. He had ordered these people into battle. He had known they would die. He had sent them anyway because the alternative was letting the Velrans be exterminated while the galaxy watched. That did not make the deaths hurt less. It just made them necessary. "Sir," his communications officer called. "We're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's High Prelate Ixan. Put him through." The display showed Ixan's face. He had aged years in the week since his first distress call. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale, but he was alive. Behind him, other Velrans were emerging from shelters, looking up at the sky where the Kragath ships were gone and human vessels now orbited. "Admiral Taiho." Ixan's voice was shaking. "You came. You actually came. I did not believe we told you we would," Taiho said simply. "How many of your people survived?" "We are still counting. Perhaps 1 billion, out of 3 billion. Ixan's voice broke. "So many dead?" "So many, I know. I'm sorry we did not get here faster." "You crossed the galaxy for us," Ixan said, tears running down his face. "You lost thousands of your people for us. People we have never met, why? Why would you do this? Tejo was quiet for a moment. He thought about how to explain Earth's history, about the disasters and near extinctions that had taught humanity to help others because no one wanted to die alone. But maybe that was too complicated. Maybe the truth was simpler. Because you asked for help, Tejo said. That is reason enough. He gave orders to begin rescue operations immediately. Human medical ships descended to the surface, bringing supplies and personnel. Human engineers began working on repairing the infrastructure that Kragath bombardment had destroyed. Human soldiers secured areas where Kragath ground forces still remained, eliminating them without mercy or hesitation. Dr. Heron Song was among the first to reach the surface. She had worked with Velran survivors during the journey, had learned their language and culture, had prepared for this moment. But nothing prepared her for the actual reality of seeing the devastation. Entire cities were gone. Forests that had stood for thousands of years were burning ash. The air itself was thick with smoke and the smell of death. She set up her medical station in what had been a school. Velran wounded began arriving immediately. More than her team could handle, more than anyone could handle. She worked for 16 hours straight, treating injuries, comforting the dying, trying to save everyone she could. When she finally stopped to rest, she found a Velran child sitting alone in a corner. The child could not have been more than 6 years old in human terms. She was staring at nothing, in shock, covered in dust and dried blood that might not be hers. Hi, Aaron sat down next to her. Hi, Aaron said softly in the Velran language. My name is Hi, Aaron. What's your name? The child did not respond. Aaron waited. Sometimes people needed time before they could speak. Everyone is gone, the child finally whispered. My family, my friends, everyone. Hiran felt her heart break. She had seen war before, had treated casualties, had buried friends, but there was something about a child's loss that cut deeper than anything else. She carefully reached out and took the child's hand. I'm sorry, Hiran said. I'm so sorry that happened. But you're not alone now. We're here. We're going to help you. Why? The child asked, looking at her with eyes too old for her age. Why do you help us? We cannot pay you. We have nothing left. Because you needed help, Hiran said. That's all the reason we need. The child began to cry and Hiran held her while she sobbed. Around them, other human medical personnel worked with the same dedication, treating every Velran patient as if they were family. Because that was what humans did. When people needed help, you helped them. It was that simple and that complicated. Meanwhile, far from Velra Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session again. This time the mood was very different from before. Ambassador Boram Shin attended, watching as species that had condemned human intervention now struggled to process what had happened. The humans destroyed a Kragath fleet, one ambassador said, voice shaking. They annihilated it. The Kragath Empire has never lost a fleet engagement before. They lost over 12,000 personnel, another pointed out. They took casualties that would break any other species' will to fight. And they just kept coming. That's what Deathworlders do, a third ambassador said quietly. They don't know when to quit. They don't understand reasonable limits. They just fight until they win or die. The council speaker addressed Boram directly. Ambassador Shin, your species has just altered the balance of power in the galaxy. The Kragath Empire is already requesting a peace conference. Other aggressive powers are reconsidering their expansion plans. You have made humanity into a power that cannot be ignored. We did not do it for power, Boram replied. We did it because the Velrans needed help and no one else would provide it. Yes, we understand your reasoning. But you must understand the implications. Every weak species in the galaxy will now expect Earth to defend them. Every aggressive empire will see humanity as a threat. You have made enemies today, Ambassador. Powerful enemies. Boram smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Let me be very clear about something. Earth did not ask permission to help the Velrans. We did not ask for approval or support. We did what we believed was right. And we will do it again. Every time someone calls for help and the galaxy refuses to answer, Earth will answer. If that makes us enemies of aggressive empires, then so be it. We would rather have their enmity than live with the shame of doing nothing. She paused, looking around the chamber at all the assembled species. You call us Deathworlders like it is a curse. You fear us because we are different. But understand this, we are not your enemies unless you make us so. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We want one thing, a galaxy where people do not die alone while others who could help choose not to. If you can accept that, we can work together. If you cannot, then stay out of our way." The chamber was silent. No one had spoken to the Galactic Council like this before. No one had dared. But everyone present knew that humanity had just proven they could back up their words with action. The Deathworlders had come when called. They had paid a terrible price to save strangers. That changed everything. Back on Velra Prime, Commander Jinho Choi was leading cleanup operations against remaining Kragath ground forces. Most had surrendered when their fleet was destroyed, but some refused to give up. They had dug into fortified positions and would fight to the death. Jinho did not try to talk them into surrendering. He understood soldiers who would rather die than face shame. He respected that, even as he killed them. His teams moved through the Kragath positions with mechanical efficiency, eliminating resistance and securing areas for Velran civilians to return. He was wounded badly. The plasma burn to his chest had not healed properly, and he knew he had internal damage that needed treatment. But there was still work to do. He could get medical attention when the mission was complete. For now, he pushed the pain aside and focused on the task. A young Velran approached him carefully. It was a male, perhaps equivalent to a human teenager, carrying a makeshift weapon and wearing clothes that were torn and bloody. "I want to help," the Velran said. "I want to fight them. They killed my family. Please let me help." Jinho looked at the young Velran and saw himself at that age, during Earth's unification wars, when he had lost his own family and wanted nothing but revenge. He understood the rage and pain. He also understood that letting civilians fight was how you created trauma that lasted generations. "No," Jinho said firmly. "Your people have suffered enough. Let us do this. But they killed everyone I loved. I know, I lost my family in a war too. I understand what you feel. But taking revenge will not bring them back. It will just damage you more. Let us carry this burden. That's why we came here. So you would not have to become what war makes people become." The Velran stood there shaking, caught between rage and grief. Finally, he dropped his weapon and collapsed. Jinho caught him and held him while he cried. Around them, the cleanup continued. Human soldiers doing brutal work so that Velrans would not have to, taking on the moral weight of violence so that a peaceful species could remain peaceful. That night, High Prelate Ixan held a memorial service for the Velran dead. 2 billion names. It would take days to read them all. But he began reading them anyway, and human personnel attended alongside Velrans. Dr. Hyerin stood in the back, listening to names she could not pronounce, mourning people she had never met. 6 months after the Battle of Velra Prime, the galaxy was a different place. The Kragath Empire, which had conquered 73 worlds over thousands of years, had sued for peace within 3 weeks of their fleet's destruction. They paid reparations to the Velrans, withdrew from 6 occupied systems and accepted human monitoring stations throughout their territory. The humiliation burned, but they had learned a lesson that aggressive species across the galaxy noted carefully: do not fight the Deathworlders. Ambassador Borum Shin sat in her office on the diplomatic station, reviewing the 17th Mutual Defense Pact request that had arrived this week. 17 different species wanted Earth's protection. They offered resources, technology, trade agreements, anything humans might want. Borum read each request carefully, knowing that her government would consider them all seriously. The pattern was always the same. A smaller species, worried about aggressive neighbors asking if Earth would defend them the way Earth had defended the Velrans. Some requests were genuine cries for help. Others were attempts to manipulate human sympathy for political gain. Borum's job was to determine which was which. A message came through on her private channel. It was High Prelate Ixan. "Ambassador Shin, I hope I am not disturbing you." "Not at all, Prelate. How are the reconstruction efforts?" "Progressing well thanks to human assistance. Our cities are rebuilding. Our people are healing. We will never forget what Earth did for us." He paused. "That is actually why I am calling. The Galactic Council has proposed that Velra Prime host a summit to discuss the formation of a new defensive alliance. They want Earth to lead it." Borum raised an eyebrow. "The same Galactic Council that condemned our intervention?" "Yes, the same ones who did nothing while my people were slaughtered. Now they want to benefit from your strength." Ixan's voice carried bitter amusement. "Politics is the same everywhere, I think. What do you think we should do?" "I think," Ixan said carefully, "that you should do what humans always do. What is right, not what is easy. There are species across the galaxy who need protection, species who cannot defend themselves. If Earth has the power to help them, then perhaps Earth has the responsibility to help them. Borum considered his words. Earth had never sought to be a galactic power. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council hoping to learn from older, wiser species. Instead, they had discovered that age did not equal wisdom, and power did not equal courage. The galaxy needed someone willing to stand up for the weak. Earth had proven it would do exactly that. I'll recommend that Earth attend the summit, Borum said, but we'll do this on our terms. On Earth, Admiral Taiho was testifying before the Unified Parliament about the Velran operation. He stood in the Great Chamber, wearing his dress uniform with 12,000 small stars sewn into the fabric, one for each person who had died under his command. The weight of it was deliberate. He never wanted to forget what his decisions cost. Admiral, one Parliament member asked, was the operation a success? We saved approximately 1 billion Velrans from extinction, Taiho replied. We destroyed a genocidal fleet. We established Earth as a power that will defend innocent species. By those measures, yes, it was a success. And the cost? 12,000 dead, 89 ships destroyed. The economic impact of mobilizing our entire fleet. Was that price acceptable? Taiho looked at the Parliament member directly. I knew soldiers would die. I sent them anyway. That is the burden of command. But I would make the same choice again. Every time, because the alternative is being the kind of people who have power and choose not to use it to help others. That is a cost I will not accept. The Parliament debated for hours, but ultimately the vote was unanimous. Earth would continue its policy of responding to legitimate distress calls. They would lead the formation of a defensive alliance based on the principle that no species should face extinction alone. They called it the Terran Accord. Dr. Hyerin Song was back on Velra Prime, helping to establish long-term medical and cultural exchange programs. The Velran child she had comforted after the battle, whose name was Lyra, had become her constant companion. Lyra was learning human language, human customs, and slowly healing from the trauma of losing her family. Dr. Hyerin, Lyra asked one day, why are humans so different from other species? What do you mean? Other species would not have come. Other species said it was not their problem. Only humans came. Why? Hyerin sat down next to the child, thinking about how to explain. Earth tried to kill humans for millions of years. Asteroids hit our planet. Ice ages froze us. Volcanoes buried us. Diseases tried to wipe us out. And then, when we finally survived all of that, we almost destroyed ourselves with war. We learned something from all that suffering. We learned that when you are dying and alone, the most precious thing in the universe is someone who will help you. So when we hear someone else calling for help, we remember what it felt like to need help. And we come. Will you always come? Every time? Yes, Hyerin said, always. That is what humans do. Lyra was quiet for a moment. I want to be like humans when I grow up. I want to help people who need help. Hyerin smiled and hugged the child. This was why Earth had crossed the galaxy. This was why 12,000 humans had died. Not just to save the Velrans, but to show the galaxy what compassion looked like. To prove that power could be used to protect instead of to conquer. Commander Jinho Choi had recovered from his injuries and was training a new special operations unit. But this unit was different. It included Velran volunteers who wanted to learn how to defend their world. Jinho was teaching them not just combat techniques, but the philosophy behind them. Fighting is not about being strong, he told his mixed human and Velran class. It is about protecting what matters. Your species is naturally peaceful. That is beautiful. But peace must sometimes be defended. We will teach you how to defend it without losing who you are. A Velran student raised his hand. Commander, humans are so good at war. Does it ever frighten you? What you can do? Jinho paused. It was a good question. Yes, every day. War is terrible. Killing is terrible. But letting innocent people die when you could have saved them is worse. So we carry the burden of being good at terrible things so that peaceful species like yours do not have to. The students nodded, beginning to understand. Earth was not teaching them to be killers. Earth was teaching them to be guardians. There was a difference, and it mattered. Lieutenant Daeun Kwan had survived the battle, though barely. She had spent 3 months in medical rehabilitation, recovering from wounds that should have killed her. Now she was being promoted to captain and given command of her own ship. At the ceremony, Admiral Taiho himself pinned on her new rank. You flew into impossible odds without hesitation, Tejo said quietly, so only she could hear. You lost most of your squadron. How do you carry that? I remember why we were there, sir, Deon replied. We did not die for nothing. We died so that children like that Velren girl, Lyra, could grow up. That makes it bearable. Good, because we are going to need more commanders who understand that. There will be other battles, other species who need help. Earth is going to keep answering when they call. Are you ready for that? Always, sir. The summit on Velra Prime brought together 37 species, more than half the known sapient civilizations in the galaxy. They met in a temporary structure built on the site where the Kragath had bombed the old council chamber. The symbolism was deliberate. From destruction they would build something new. Ambassador Borum stood before the assembly and laid out Earth's vision for the Terran Accord. It was simple. Any member species that faced existential threat would receive military support from all other members. There would be no debates, no committees, no diplomatic delays. When someone called for help, the Accord would answer immediately. But there are conditions, Borum said. First, the Accord will only defend against genuine threats. We will not be used as a weapon in territorial disputes or political games. Second, member species must contribute what they can, whether that is ships, supplies, or simply safe harbor for refugees. And third, aggressor species can join the Accord too, but only if they renounce conquest and accept monitoring to ensure compliance. A Kragath representative stood up. The room fell silent. No one had expected them to attend. The Kragath Empire wishes to join the Terran Accord, the representative said, his voice stiff with barely controlled pride. We have learned the cost of aggression. We have learned that conquest brings only death. We wish to be part of something better. The room erupted in discussion, the Kragath asking to join an alliance led by the species that had destroyed their fleet. It seemed impossible. But Borum understood what it meant. The galaxy was changing. Old patterns of behavior were breaking down. New possibilities were emerging. If the Kragath truly renounce conquest, Borum said, then Earth will support their membership. But understand this, we will be watching. Any return to your old ways will be met with the same response you received at Velra Prime. Are you willing to accept those terms? We are, the Kragath representative said. We have no choice. The alternative is isolation and eventual collapse. We choose survival. We choose peace. The Kragath were accepted with extensive monitoring provisions. And Earth, the youngest species,